Begin the current daf in the Masechta Bava Metzia Daf begin on the second line down at the top of the Amid, where the Gemara continues the discussion. Really, it's something we had assumed on the previous daf, and it's something now the Gemara asks, what's the halacha? And actually says a machlekes tanoim regarding this halacha of misadrin l'balchayv, that do we go ahead and organize the basic needs of a debtor, or do we not? The shiur corresponds because the Chesed turned to the Daf from the Daf should be schus v'chein so that's throughout the entire world. So discussing today's Daf are misadrin. Do we organize the needs of a person be'erichin when he takes an erich vow, b'balchayv, by a creditor, behektish when he vows something to hektish, halacha b'chazar behektish. Is there such a thing of like behektish that you give back, like we say regarding a balchayv, by a borrower, that we give back his stuff, his collateral? Rabbi Avu Eliyahu Hanavi, the Gemara brings an interesting discussion between Rabbi Avu and Eliyahu Hanavi. Also, several other halachas regarding returning collateral, and the halacha of an usher regarding the halacha of returning his security. Do you get to use his security or not? The difference regarding if the collateral is taken at the time of the loan. The purpose of why we take security in the first place, if you have to always give it back, is because we don't want Shemitah year to cancel it. And the halacha metalnates the banav that it should not become like a regular movable item by his children and not be able to allow you to collect it after you pass away. Basis shel oriv, the house of the guarantor, and scharai regarding his reward, meaning payment. If someone's coming for payment, then maybe you actually could go into someone else's house, although we say regarding security that you're not allowed to. So begin the current daf Kofi Dal, the second line down, that the Gemara had said that Kederach Shemesajim Be'erichin, we've had this in the previous of the Amid, that Kach Mesajim Be'balchayv, if a person pledges his Erich, so if he's poor, he cannot pay the full amount, we make an assessment to ensure that he's left with his basic necessities. Similarly, when collecting a debt, one must leave the bar with his necessities. The Gemara now has a discussion and asks this as a question. Meaning, in the previous stuff we had that the Gemara had asked a question regarding Rabbi Shloimy Schwartzberg. We said that if Rabbi Shloimy holds you sell the item, he certainly doesn't hold that we make an assessment to leave him with his necessities. So the Gemara had that was the question that was asked, as we said in Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel. Now the Gemara asks the following question: So now the Gemara asks it. Although we had this discussion, the Gemara asks it straight up. Do we indeed rule that we leave a borrower with his necessities? And the question is, as the Gemara explains, Mi gamar micha micha me'erchen. By the leiv and amalva, by borrowing a lender, it says in the pasuk, your brother's going to be poor, and his hand's going to be outstretched to you. Now it says by erichin also v'machu me'erkacha, he's poor from erichin. Now just like by erichin, we know the halacha is that the pasuk says v'machu me'erkacha, that if he's too poor to pay the full amount, we expound hechayel me'erkacha, which means we make an assessment, we leave him with his necessities. Would we say the same thing by the pasuk b'chayim that says do we expound this gezer shava and leave a balchay with his necessities as well, or do we not expound this gezer shava? So Gemara says Tashma, it's being a raya. The Shalach Ravin Beigarte, Ravin sent in a letter. It says, this question I asked to all my teachers, if we learn this gezer shava of micha, and they didn't tell me anything. Barum, however, shaila. But there was a question that was asked in the base of Medrash, and from there you could learn that you're not misajin l'bachayv. You don't make sure, it's not your responsibility when you're collecting from the borrower to make sure he has his basic necessities. Why? Because the question was said like this. If someone says, it says, I have a responsibility to give to the temple upkeep, to the treasury, 100 dinar. Now, the halacha of heseg yad, which is, what a guy could afford, was only said by erichin vow. But by other hekdeshes, there you don't have the halacha of heseg yad. And whatever he has, you take from him. And whatever he still owes, they'll collect later on when he becomes wealthy. So it was regarding that question that they said, Ma'oshe Sadru. Are you Mesadra for him when you're coming to take security collateral from this guy who pledged to give to the Bedek Abayis that you give him his basics? Rabbi Yaakov Mishmei de Barpada and Rabbi Yirmi Mishmei de Ilfa Amri, both of them said, Kavachem B'chayv. We could prove a Kavachem of an halachas of a B'chayv, which is Ma B'chayv if regarding a creditor. That the halacha is Shemachzirin, that the lender is commanded to return the security to the borrower. And yet, and this is where the raya is from within their question, from within their statement, from their kavachaymer, you see that they say, by b'chayiv, the halacha is ein misadrin, even though you machzir, even though you have to give back the collateral. You don't, meaning like at nighttime, at daytime, you don't take care that he makes sure he has the basics, that he has something left over. Let's say when you're selling all the stuff after 30 days. So hektish ein machzirin, so a hektish where there is no such halacha of giving back, in the din shein misadrin, isn't it a kavachaymer that you don't organize that he has his basics? So again, from within the kavachaymer, you see this concept that by b'chayv you're not misadrin l'b'chayv. That just it's coming up in like a secondary way of saying, well, if b'chayv where you're machzir, you're not misadrin, so hektish where there is no machzirin, for sure you're not misadrin. Rabbi Yechonam, he says, ned de be'erkacha ksiv. The pasuk says when you're going to go and enunciate a vow for your erichin of a person's life, the pasuk is being makish, making a hekish, nedarim, could sing kiyafli neder, to erichin, which is said be'erkacha, which is teaching us the following hekish. Ma erichin, just like be'erichin misadrin, you do organize. Av hektish misadrin, so by hektish, when you take a neder to hektish, you are misadrin. So again, we have a machlekes regarding Allah of hektish of the misadrin or not. But one thing is that we see that the one who said that behektish should not misadrin, he was coming from a kavachaymer from Balchayiv, that even though you're machzirin, you're not misadrin. So that answers our question that you see that by Balchayiv, you're not misadrin. Now, v'idach, however, the other man, the Amar, who again says that you are not misadrin, so what do you do? What do you do with the hekesh of comparing neder to erichin, which the other man, the Amar, was saying is teaching you like by erichin you're misadrin, so to hekesh, but this man holds you not. He would tell you that's teaching you a different idea. It's coming to teach you to the concept of that we educate something based on its importance. Meaning, if someone says the monetary value of my heart or my head or my liver is on me to give to hektish, he's got to give his entire body's value because it's something that his neshama depends on. But if let's say he says on a limb that his soul does not depend on, that its value is on him to give to hektish, so we evaluate him like a slave that's sold in the marketplace. How much is he worth with a hand? How much is he worth without a hand? And it's regarding that teaching that we need to learn out neder from erichin, because by erichin it says erikach nefashos, which if you say the erich of a limb that the soul depends on, that I'm taking that on me, then you have to give the entire value. But if he says the erich yadolai, so he hasn't said anything because there's no erichin that said. But for a nefesh, it's regarding that we are learning out for that teaching, that just like by ma erichin nidin b'chavaydai, just like by the erichin halacha, you evaluate that limb according to its importance. If it's something that his soul depends on, he has to give an entire value. So then av hektish nidin b'chavaydai. So then hektish also is teaching us that it goes based on that importance, which the problem that Teisus discusses is that we don't say hekesh lamechza, like you're saying it's only for that, but you should still learn out that you're misadrin because it's still comparing, and Rabbi Yechon has a point. If by erichin you're misadrin, so then hektish should also be misadrin. Which Teisus says, well, maybe because it says that nefasha is in the pasuk, it would only be for nefesh. But akaponim, it really comes down to like if a kavachaymer is mevatel a hekesh, which he's saying a kavachaymer. If balchayv is not misajin, so then hektish for sure should not be misajin. So that's what Tais discusses when you say a kavachaymer is going to override a hekesh or when not. And actually, Tais in Div Maskal Ma Erichin, he says that Rashi says that how do you know that by Erichin you go according to the importance, let's say a heart or a brain, that is the entire thing, because it's a pasuk nefashas. Which is bothered in the Maskal Ma'erich, and he says, what do you need a pasuk for? Why is it different than damages? If you cut off a hand, you evaluate how much of the hand, but But if you do with a heart, of course you killed the whole person. You have to give the entire value. So Taisus, no, it's not like as if you would take out. It would be like as if it belongs to someone else. So the person wouldn't be dead, and therefore you need a pasuk actually to teach you this idea of that it's nidim b'chvaydim. But Al-Kapanim, this is really old parenthetical to just that discussion of hektish, you misogyn. We brought it in because we wanted to prove if we're misogyn by a b'chayv, which we showed you that the first man, the Amr, who was saying that by hektish you're not misogyn, was proving it from b'chayv, that if you machzirin, you give back the mashkin, and yet still you're not misogyn, for sure not misogyn by hektish. Now the Gemara has a question now, and says that the Sadju b'bachayv. I have a question. Why don't you say that you do are mesad? You take care of the basics of a b'chayv. Kavachem erichin, because ma erichin if by erichin shei machzirin, which there's no such halacha of giving, of hektish, let's say giving back to a person his security, his collateral, and yet mesadrin, we said that you do organize the basic needs of a person. That's a pasuk in the Torah that you do. So then, so then by a creditor, where every single day you have to give back the tools that he needs, in addition, isn't a kabachaymer that when you come in to sell it after 30 days, you should leave him with his basic necessities, a bed and a mat and all the things that the Gemara says in Eichan Avchav Gimel on base? How are we saying that you're not masajin by bachayv? So Makra, no, it's because the pasuk said in Yikra, v'machu me'erkecha. It says who? What who? If he's going to be poor from his erichin, and therefore then you make sure he has his basics, is hu v'lebachayv. It's a miyut. Who is saying it's this halach of hesed yad will only apply by erichin and will not apply by the halachas of a creditor, and that we're not mesajin by bachayv. But the idach, the other man, but the Tanakh of the Mishnah, who he said that you are mesajin bachayv, where the reason how we know that is because in our Mishnah he said, if the guy dies, you don't give back the security to the yarshin, but it sounds like to the guy himself, you would always give it back. So that's obviously that you are misajin. So says the Gemara, hi, this that says who by erich, and he darshans it for something else. It's that it's only if he remained poor from the beginning till the end, meaning that if, let's say, when he takes the erich vow on himself, he's poor. Then he becomes wealthy before the kohen evaluates him. He will not have the halacha of hasagas yad, of like, okay, we'll minimize, on the sliding scale. He's going to have to give the erich of a usher, because ultimately he was not poor at the time when Taisus said a little different, like Rabbi Yehuda in over there in Erichin, that if he was poor, then wealthy, then back poor again. Even so, he wasn't poor the whole time, then he won't get this sliding scale. He'll have to give the full amount. That's what he learns from the word who. So we have this machlokes regarding b'chayv and mesajin or not. But now the Gemara has a different question. It says, v'yachziru behektish. By hektish, when hektish takes collateral, hektish should have to give back every night or day, if it's pajamas or if it's a guy's plow, you should have to give it back up until 30 days. Kavachem b'chayv. Why? Ma b'chayv shei mesajin. If regarding a creditor, you just told me that we're not mesajin b'chayv, we don't make sure he has his basic needs. When time is up, I'm taking everything. You're left with not. You don't have a shirt on your back. Yet machzir nalach is up until that time. Every night and day, I have to be giving back to you the collateral. So hektish and masajin, hektish that you are masad. You make sure that the guy has the basic of needs, as we see by the halacha of erichin. So in addition, machzirin, isn't it a couple chaimer that for sure that hektish should be giving back the collateral every night and day? No, on Makra, because the pasuk says in the Varim, it says that this guy that you took his pajamas, you took his pillows and the blankets as collateral, and you're going to give it back to him, he'll be able to sleep in his clothing, and then he'll bless you. Which, yatsa hektish ain't tzarich bracha, that excludes hektish, that doesn't need your blessings. So therefore, it's not included in this halacha of returning the security. Says really? Hektish does not need, Hashem doesn't need your blessings? But Ksiv says a pasuk in the Varim, v'chalti you'll eat, v'sabati b'seisha, v'rachta b'gayman, you'll bless Hashem, your God. You say Hashem wants your blessings. So rather, Amakra, the Gemara says from a different pasuk. It says, l'chati tzedakah. If you give the security back to the borrower, to you it's going to be considered as charity, which is misha tzarich tzedakah, only someone that needs charity. Yatsa hektish ain't tzarich tzedakah. Hektish is excluded. It doesn't need your charity, and therefore it's excluded from this halacha of having this halacha of machzirim. which Halach L'Maisa Toys actually brings on the bottom from Rabbi Shloimy. He says yes, ein mesajin bal chayv. We're not mesajin bal chayv, but a creditor comes, he can take everything that he needs and brings many rayas that's the halacha. Now the Gemara has an interesting incident where Ashkei Rabbi Baravu Eliyahu. Rabbi Baravu met Eliyahu Hanavi. He was in a non-Jewish cemetery. So he asked him, which Taisa brings this different girsayis of what was his question. Our girsa is he asked him, what's the halacha? Do we assess the needs of a borrower? Taisa brings a different girsa from Rabbeinu Tam. He didn't ask him what's the halacha, because actually we don't paskin like Eliyahu Hanavi answered. The question is actually minalan. He wanted to know those who hold that you're misajin, where do they get this idea from? Akapanim Amalei Eliyahu Hanavi answered him, Gama Michem Erichin. We learn out this Gezeres Shabbat says mach, and mach says pour by both Erichin and by Balchayv, which that teaches us that you are misajin, because Gabi Erichin Ksiv v'machu be'erkecha, that if you pour from your Erich vow. Gabi Balchayv Ksiv by credit it says your brother's poor, you got to go ahead and lend the money. So, just like by Erichin, we know there's a halach of hesed yad that you have to be misajin. You have to make sure the guy has his basic needs. You can't take everything for his Erich. So too, you see the same thing by a creditor. Now, as he continues on his base, he continues to ask him. He says, "Minayin la'arim shelo yitrim." Where do we know a person that's undressed should not be separating truma? So he says the chesivka says the pasuk in Devarim. Says, "V'lo yirebecha ervas davar," should not be seen by you anything of nakedness, which is when you're talking about Hashem, it should not be seen by you an ervas davar, which from there we learn that a person should not make a bracha when he's undressed. And the thing is, when you take off truma, you have to make a bracha. So Tais and Rashi both ask, say, why we discussing this specifically regarding taking truma if it's just about any bracha that you shouldn't make when you're undressed. So Rashi says because it's a mishnah in trumas that says imak be in truma arim. Now it's about truma undressed, and that's the question. Well, why not? What is taking off truma? Why do you have to be just taking off truma? The reason is because you have to make a bracha, and you cannot make a bracha in the state of undressed. But then he asks Eliyahu Hanavi like this. Amalei, he says, Lav koyin humar, isn't the master a koyin? Which is Rashi brings, there's a man da Amar, brought in Pirkei Eliezer, that Eliyahu Hanavi was Pinchas, which, because by Pinchas it says Bekanas Kanasi. Eliyahu Hanavi says Kana Kanasi. We learn out that this one who takes revenge, who has a kina, is Eliyahu is the same one that's Pinchas. So we know Pinchas was a kohen, as the Torah talks about the parasha of Pinchas. Why are you in the cemetery? A kohen's not allowed to come to me. Amalai says to him, didn't you, Rabbi Vahu, learn say the Taras? The Torah learned the Braisa. He says, the graves of non-Jews don't contaminate, because by the tumas oil, which is being in a cemetery when you're leaning over something like you're oil, you're hovering over it. It says Adam. It says Adam kiyamas b'hayil. A person that dies that in the tent. Now, Adam, Shenemet says in the pasuk in Yechezkel, Hashem says to the Jewish people, "V'atein tzayni, you're my sheep. Tzayin marisi, the sheep of my pasture. Adam atem, you are man," which teaches us atem kurim Adam. You, the Jewish people, are called Adam. Ve'ein oiv de kechavim kurin Adam. But non-Jews are not called Adam, and therefore there's no tum of Adam kiyamas ba'oil, and there is no problem, although I'm a kohen, to be in the cemetery. So, Amalei, so Rabbi Bavu responded. He said, "Ba'arbola mitzina." He says to be well versed in 4 of the 6 sedarim of Shas, which is like Mayid, Nezikin, Nashim, which those are things that apply in today's time just like it was in the times of the Beis HaMikdash. And Kachim too, even though that's really for the Beis HaMikdash, but the pasuk says, in all places you'll sacrifice and you'll bring for my name, which the Gemara Menachos of Kofiyot says, what do you mean all places? It's only in the Beis HaMikdash. This refers to Talmidei Chacham that are Isaac in the halachas of the Avodah of the Beis HaMikdash, wherever they are. The pasuk considered as if they were sacrificing in the Beis HaMikdash. That's why we say Karbanes, and therefore that's why the study of Kachim is still very much strong and alive, because it's still relevant, even though we don't have a Beis HaMikdash. So he says, in the 4 that are still relevant, that I don't know so well. B'shita Metzina, you think I'm gonna know Zroim, which doesn't apply where we live in Babel and Chutz La'aretz, and Taris, which is also not applicable. So why do you tell me like I don't know a Mishnah and say the Taris? Rabbi Baravua, tell Eliyahu Navi, because Eliyahu Navi is saying, what do you ask me why I'm in the cemetery? You're allowed to be, as Rabbi Shloimy Schwartzberg taught. Amalei says, Vamai. Eliyahu says, why? Why can't you? Why don't you know your studies so well? Amalei says, because Techikli Milsa says, I live in extreme poverty. It's very hard for me. So Dabre, he took him, he brought him to Gan Eden. Amalei said to him, Pasha Glimach, says, take off your jacket, Sefei, gather, Shakal Mahani Tarfi, take from these leaves. Doesn't tell us which leaves these are, but you could use your imagination. Safa, he gathered, and Shakal, he took some of the leaves. Kavanafik, when he was leaving, Shama the Kamar, Rabbi heard that there was a voice that was saying, Man ka'achal alme, who is consuming his world? Like Rabbi Bavu, where here he is, he's worried, he wants to take from this Gan Eden for the world that he's in right now. So Nafetz, he scattered the leaves, Shadinu, and he threw it, and he didn't take, obviously, the leaves. He didn't want to take his next world reward in this world. Says even so, I see Glime, but he took his jacket back, and Sachad Glime Recha, his jacket was squeezing out this scent from the leaves that he had put there in his talis, and that jacket absorbed the smell of those leaves. And Zavne, he was able to sell his jacket betraysa alpha. Obviously, it was really a bekasha, but he went and he sold the betraysa alpha dinari for 12,000 dinarim. And plaginu lechasen vase. This is a very difficult Gemara over here. He split it amongst his son-in-laws. You have to know why he would do such a thing. But that's how the story ends. It says Mezuk was the pshat. Why? Oh, but the Eidim get the cheshbon. Now, there are very interesting taises over here. Taises in middle of what? Right. Now, this is very interesting taises because taises here in this discussion, when he's talking about how do we rule masajin or not masajin, where he wanted to say, it sounds like from Eliyahu Navi's response, that you are masajin. So he says that Eliyahu Navi was called Dechuyev Amadchile. Eliyahu was not giving straight answers. Really, he should have said a masajin, but he was just saying, you want to know how do we know masajin? I'll tell you how. And he says, I'll prove to you, says Taisus. He responded to the question. This is the middle of the Taisus here on Ahmed Bays, this big Taisus. He says that, he responded that, what are you doing in our Jewish cemetery? He says, what do you mean? It's not matam like Rav Shimon Yochai. He says, we don't paskin like that. We paskin Rav Shimon Leil in the Mishnah and Alois that actually you're not allowed to go into an apartment of a non-Jew because of tumas oil, because they have their dead fetuses there. The reason why Eliyahu was in the non-Jewish cemetery was because most coffins have a pesach tefach, have a gap of a handbreadth, and we find places that they were not geyser. For example, let's say you're going out to greet kings. The Gemara famously in Brachas tells us you're allowed to jump over the graves to get there, and that's why he was allowed to be there. So that's our Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai. We don't paskin like that. We actually hold that they are metame. And so do we find when Eliyahu Navi was burying Rabbi Kiva, he was also saying that they were telling him, aren't you a Kohen? How you allowed to bury Rabbi Kiva? So he said this famous controversial thing which many people quote, tzaddikim are not metamen. So that's not true. He says he was only saying it because of the covet of Rabbi Kiva. The real reason why he was burying Rabbi Kiva because it was a mace mitzvah. Because everyone was afraid to bury Rabbi Kiva because from the Harugi Malchus, the government executed him. No one wanted to touch Rabbi Kiva because then they're going to get executed. And he says that you find also, very interesting, he brings from a Chuvas Goyin that says from Seyd Eliyahu Rabbah that there was a disagreement in the yichus of Eliyahu Navi. Is he from the grandchildren of Leah or from Rachel? And he says, what are you talking about from Leah? He says, I'm from Rachel. But that's impossible because then he wouldn't be a Kohen. And here he says he's a Kohen. And that story ends where they told Eliyahu Navi, says, bring a simon for what you're saying, that you're from the children of Rachel. He says, what do you mean? Look at the yichus of Binyamin, where it says, a pasuk in Divrei Yom Aleph, V'yarsihu velyo v'zirchi b'nei Yeruchim, which he says, you see that I'm from Sheba Binyamin. So they said to him, but didn't you tell that widow, which a different story that's brought in Malachim Aleph, that you told the widow, make for me a little dough, and because you wanted to take it to challah? So isn't that proof that you are a kohen, that you're from the children of Leah? He says, no, that child was Mashiach ben Yosef. I was just trying to be Meramez to the world that I come first before Mashiach. So he says, and it's in that same response and that they bring this teaching of Micha. So he just says that can't bring a raya from this, that like what Elyonav is saying, because Elyonav is talking in riddles over here. He's just matcha them. He just says these things, but it's not really necessarily the so to speak the emes. When he says Rabbi Yisai, that they were disagreeing. Is Elyonav from God? Is he from Binyamin? And he says that I'm from Rachel, where again Taisa says it's not really possible. Salk upon him, which actually there's another interesting Taisa. And the Ri wonders, how did he bring back to life? We know the famous story, the son of the widow. He was a kohen, but he's dead. How is he allowed to go do that? He says Taisa is fascinating. He said, his comment is bringing back to life. That's what he's allowed to. He doesn't say that means he wasn't dead, meaning it sounds like it would be a problem, but Pekuach Nefesh, Shaila is the famous, they ask, is there such a thing as Pekuach Nefesh when the guy is dead? Right? Tchias HaMeisim, is that Pekuach Nefesh? Taisa sounds like that he sounds like that would be Pekuach Nefesh, that even though the guy's already dead. Akapan V'Oifen, that's where the Gemara ends regarding this conversation of Masajin B'Chay B'Nat. Now going back to the halacha of a mashkin, in the Bryce, the pasuk says in Devarim, "V'im ish anihu." Now, if he's a poor man, it says in the Torah, you should not sleep with his security. So if you got these silk pajamas from this guy that owes you money, you can't be sleeping in it. It says the Gemara, ha'asher shachiv. But what? If he's wealthy, then you have these Birkenstocks that you took from him, and now you could be walking around with it. You could be. Then he's wealthy. You could sleep in it with his security. Says the Gemara, my kamar. What you think? Because to the contrary. The Bryce was saying ha'asher shachiv. If he's wealthy, then you could sleep with it. So the Gemara is asking, my kamar. Well, because he's wealthy, they permitted him to sleep with his talis. Why is that not possible? Says Rashi, because that's ribis. Because you're utilizing his collateral for free, and that would be a problem on taking interest on the loan. So how is that possible? So Amar Sheish says, no, Hachim, this is how you have to translate the Brisa. If he's a pauper, you should not be going to sleep at night time, and his security is still by you. Rather, you have to return it to him when the sun is setting, like it says, Hashav Tashleh Abid Kebay Hashemish. Ha'ashav is wealthy, you could go to sleep and you could have the security by you, but you're not allowed to use it and have benefit, because that would be a problem about ribbis. Someone learn the Brisa, if someone lends his friend, he's not allowed to take seize collateral, and he does not have to return it, but he violates all these terms in the Torah of Hashiv Tashiv, so the Gemara says, "My kama." How do you read this? How do you read this brisa? You first say that the guy shouldn't take security, but if he does, he doesn't have to return it to him. And then you say, "Oh, but you violate all these shemas." Hashiv Tashiv, but didn't you say that you don't have to return it? How could you be violating these isurim? So Rav Shei says, "Come on, this is how you have to read the brisa." If someone lends his friend money in Yerushalayim Ashkelon, he's not allowed to go ahead and seize collateral. If he did seize collateral, then actually you have to give it back to him. And you violate all these negative prohibitions in the Torah, is going safer, meaning if you don't return it, meaning you have to return it. If you don't return it, then you're going to violate these issues. That's one interpretation. Another interpretation, Rava Amar, he says, no, you can't say that the Tana made a mistake in the words that he wanted to say, that the way you just read it, Rav Sheshes, that chayav lahachzer, and to add on the words Eina Chayav Lahachzir. Most definitely, the words were no Eina Chayav Lahachzir. Not like you're trying to read a Chayav Lahachzir, but Hachikamar. You have to read it like this: that he forgot and he left out and he skipped the words Mechayav Lahachzir until where he talks about Eina Chayav Lahachzir as follows. Someone lends his friend money, so he said, you're not allowed to seize collateral. The Mishkanoi, if you did seize collateral, yes, Chayav Lahachzir, right, you're right, the words of the Brisa were Eina Chayav Lahachzir. We're not up to that yet. We skipped it. We're going to come back to it. We're going to clarify that. So if you seize collateral, Chayav Lahachzir, you have to give it back to him. But remember when we say this, that if he took the collateral not at the time of the loan in court, meaning through the bezdin, but if he took the security at the time of the loan, where the guy brings him his security, then he actually does not have to give it back to him, because the pasuk that tells us these obligations of giving it back are when you take the chavala, when you take the security after the loan, where the guy brings it to you, that's not chayvaloi, and therefore these halachas don't apply. And when the Brisa concludes, it says that he violates all these different prohibitions, is a reisha, is when you take the security not at the time of the loan and you don't return it to him, then you violate all these different violations in the Torah. Similarly, the Gemara says, Tani Rav Shizvi Kamed Rava. Shizvi taught a Brisa in front of Rava. It says in the pasuk in Shemai is Ad Bayashemesh Tishabenolai. Up until when the sun comes, you should return it to him. Now it sounds like that in the morning you should return it to him, and it should remain by him up until the sun comes, up until the sun sets. So it says, you can read the pasuk, Ad by Hashemesh Tishabenolai, that it should be returned to him up until when the sun sets. Meaning, you give it back to him in the morning until the sun sets, and then you take it back from him. But the Brisa says, Zuk Sus Laila. This is referring to a night garment, which the Gemara is going to ask very shortly. He says, what do you mean? It's a night garment. At nighttime is when you should return it to him. Why does the guy have it all day until nighttime? Now, there's another pasuk in the Varm. It says, Hashav Tashav Leisa Avid Kabaya Shemesh. You should surely return to him his security when the sun sets, which is return to him at nighttime. Says the Brisa, this is what Rav Shizbi was teaching this Brisa in front of Rava, Zuk Susyam, this refers to a day garment. So, Amalei, so Rava responds to Rav Shizbi, who's telling him this Brisa, he says, why is the guy having a day garment during the night? Or and why does he have a night garment, pajamas, during the daytime? So Amalei, so Rav Shizbi said, Isami? Should I delete this Brisa from my whole corpus of Mishnayos that I know? Because you're right, it seems to be the exact opposite. Amalei says, no, don't delete it, because this that the Brisa mentions, Ksus Lail and Ksus Yoim, it doesn't mean that it's used during the daytime or it's used during the nighttime. Rather, it means a garment that's used as security of nighttime and the garment that's used as security for the daytime. And this is Hachikam, this is what the Brisa was saying. Ad Bayashemesh Tishavenu Loi, until the sun sets is when it should be returned to him, meaning, and when the sun sets, you should take it away from him. The words of the Brisa, Zuk Sus Yoim, this is a day garment, means to say that it's coming to teach you Shenitna L'chavel Balayla, that so you take the security at nighttime, and it's regarding the security that we call it Ksus Laila. You're right, it's really Ksus Yoim. This is what we call it Ksus Laila, and they say, for you, it's the garment that you take at nighttime as security. And same thing as the other half, the other pasuk. Hashav Tashav Leisa Abed Kabaya Shemesh, you shall return to him his security when the sun sets. Zuk Sus Laila, of course, that's the pajamas that you're giving back to him at nighttime. That you take as security during the daytime. So we call it Ksus Yom, doesn't really mean Ksus Yom, means it's the garment of the daytime that you take as security. Now, a later discussion, Amr Rabbi Yechanan, he says, Mishkanai Umeis. If someone took security and the borrower died after he already returned to him his security. So let's say it was nighttime and the guy's pajamas. In the middle of the night, the guy has a heart attack and the guy's wearing the pajamas, the collateral. So Shamtai, the lender, could strip it me'al gabe banav from his children. It does not become by the inheritors like other metaltalin, which are not indebted to the creditor, because once you take it as a security, you already acquired it. Now, Meisvei, the Gemara asks from the Brisa, Amar Meir, he says, says, well, once you take security, why do you give it back? So says the Gemara, why do you give it back? The Torah says to give it back. What type of question is that? Rather, the question is, once you're giving it back, so it's continuing of Kaftes Vav Med Aleph, so then, why do you go and take it back as collateral? The next day, you got to go ahead and give it right back, like people were asking the other day. So the answer is, we don't want to have that the Shemitah year should cancel, that it should be security by him. And if someone lends on a mashkin, Shemitah does not cancel it. So that's one purpose of having the mashkin, simply the fact that the loan is on the security. And moreover, it's we don't want that it should become movable items by his children. Meaning we don't want that the guy should die while the mashkin is returned to him, and then it becomes metalton by his children. That's why he takes it back. So that's the question on Rabbi Yechon, and says the Gemara, wait a second. So from Rameir, it sounds like time of the Hadam Ashkenaz. The reason is because he took it back where it was in his possession when the borrower died. It means like musical chairs, like who's going to have it when he dies? Like the reason why you take it back is to make sure you have it when the music stops. But it sounds like if he didn't take it back, then actually he would not be able to take it, and it would stay with the children as metalton. But that contradicts Rabbi Yechon, who said that no, even if the children have it, you could go and strip it and take it back. So Rabbi Masna says no. Didn't you already amend this reading of the Brisa from the beginning? Because we had asked, we said, we said, what do you mean? So you have to amend it. So Taratachi, so continue to amend it and explain like this. If you're returning it, so why do you go ahead and take it as a mashkin from the beginning? If anything, you have to return it. What's the purpose from the beginning if you're not going to have it? That the answer was that Shemitah shouldn't cancel it. It should not become metalton by his children, because when the moment that you take it as a mashkin, you already acquired it. And therefore, when you return it, even if the guy dies and he has it, it's considered a pekadon by him, and therefore, that's you can be able to go ahead and take it back, and therefore it does not contradict Rabbi Yechon. Which the top taser asks from Rabbi Chanan, he says, wait a second. Even if that's the case according to Rabbi Yechon, then why taka do you take it back? Why do you take it back? You can anyways be able to strip it from his children. So why do you go every day back and forth, back and forth, back and forth? Just take it one time mashkin, give it to him, and leave it over there. Says Taisus, we don't want the borrower to deny, because if you never take it back, he'll deny that this is ever a mashkin. And also that regarding the swift ability of collecting his debt, for him to have to go ask for the money, because he's embarrassed, meaning the borrower is going to be embarrassed every single day. He has to go get his mashkin back. It's going to speed up the process. He doesn't want this anymore. Every day he has to go get his pajamas, knocking on the guy's door and say, could I get my pajamas back for the night? So therefore, that's why he keeps on taking it back. So I'm going to learn the brisa that ends off this discussion with an agadic teaching. Pasuk says in Devarim, that you should not come to the guy's house to seize collateral. Says the brisa, to his house you don't enter. But you know what? Interesting. You're allowed to go and take collateral from the guarantor's home. It's a pasuk in Mishlei that says, "Lakach bigdai," taking his garment, ki or bizarre, because he guaranteed himself for a fremde, for a foreigner, etc. But like it says a pasuk in Mishlei, "B'nei my son, if you went and you guaranteed for your friend, tekat lazar kapecha." Now you went ahead and you stuck your palm to a foreigner, or if the kashta b'imripicha, you got caught in the words of your mouth, where let's say you hurt someone with your words, so then nilkadita b'imripicha, then you got trapped in the words of your mouth. Asay zeis, so do this, efay, at least b'ni, my son, b'natl, you'll be saved. Because you came into the palm of your friend. Says, go ahead and degrade yourself, and make your friend into a ruler. So what does this mean? So the Gemara translates. There's two different things the pasuk is talking about. If this other guy has a claim of money by you because you are Rav to Lazar, you became a guarantor for a foreign person, okay, then head to lay pieces yadai. Then you have to go ahead and open up the palm of your hand. That's hispar says, hater pas. open up the palm of your hand if you made yourself as a guarantor. Fimlav, and if not, if you did not make yourself in the guarantor, you just stumbled with hurting someone with your words. That's when the pasuk is saying, Rahav re'echa. What does that mean to say? That means to say, Harba lav re'im. The word Rahav could be like Harbe. Increase friends to go ask him mechila. Now, Litzad Sheni, on the second side, it means like davar achar, like another way of interpreting this is lebeisai. Yeah, that to the house of the borrower, when it comes to a loan, that's iyat nechnas. That's what the pasuk says, leisobel beis lav avoite. Meaning, one interpretation was, but you can go to the house of the guarantor, which we just had a lengthy explaining psukim and mishlei. Or another interpretation is you could say, to his house of the borrower, iyat nechnas, you cannot enter. But you could go to take collateral for a different debt that's not a loan. Let's say l'schar kataf. Let's say if a guy owes you wages for schlepping stuff, shouldering things, l'schar chamar, or let's say for the wages that you were the donkey driver, l'schar pundak, or let's say he owes you rent for staying in your motel, or l'schar yuknois, or let's say you painted these beautiful images in this house for payment, then you're allowed to go into his house and take collateral. Now, but you would think that you would be allowed to, even if you converted the owed wages into a loan, you said, okay, you know what, you owe me, it's like a loan. No, then you're not allowed to go into his house. The pasuk says, Mashas Mu'uma, any loan is prohibited to go and enter the person's house to seize collateral. It's only when it's wages that's owed that one is allowed to. Thank you to any time for hosting us.